Under a new bill, millions of older Americans could lose the food stamps. Lawmakers in the House have already proposed a bill that's going to make it harder for Americans to qualify. Some retirees may be forced to return to work or risk even losing the benefits. So now, this is really important news, everybody, that you have to know. People in every state would be impacted if the proposal becomes law, although residents of Alaska, South Carolina, and Oklahoma will be the hardest hit by this. According to the study on Center of Budget and Policy Priorities, the analysis is based on the number of households in those states that would fall under new work requirements like older adults and families with children over 7. He's a Republican from South Dakota, and more than 20 other Republican lawmakers who introduced the bill say the America Works Act is needed to get more food stamp recipients back in the workforce. But research has shown that most recipients of SNAP that can work are already working. So far, the Republican bill is unlikely to make into law anytime soon, given that the Senate is controlled by the Democrats. Yet the push reflects efforts by GOP lawmakers to trim the spending and benefit programs like food stamps too. Almost 1 in 3 residents who currently receive food stamps in Alaska, South Carolina, and Oklahoma would be at risk of losing their SNAP. The least impacted recipients would be those in Washington, Idaho, and Vermont, where about 1 in 5 people are at risk of losing the food stamps, and that's something that's not good, because SNAP already has work requirements, and currently they're aimed at the so-called able-bodied adults. Under these rules, able adults are people who are not disabled, who don't have dependents, and who are already between 18 to 49. Plus, they must work 20 hours a week, or they must enroll in a work training program to receive food stamps. Under the GOP proposal, these work requirements would be expanded to adults between 50 and 65, which the lawmakers say they would align the program with Medicare. About 4 million children between 7 to 18 who live in households receiving food stamps could be at risk of losing the food aid, and 3 million adults with children or dependents could lose their benefits too, while another 2 million people between 50 to 64 who don't have dependents could lose access to food stamps. Many Americans are familiar with a 30% rule, which dictates that housing costs should never eat up more than 30% of your household. But it turns out the old rule of thumb has become unattainable for those that reside in an apartment these days. For the first time ever, American renters are spending that astronomical percentage or more. Moody's Analytics calls it a rent burden. Meanwhile, high mortgage rates have prevented Americans from making the leap from renter to homeowner. That in turn has meant a much shorter rental unit shortage, moving landlords to raise prices. This could spell disaster for more than 5 million households that are already behind the rent, owing an average of $2,000 in some areas. But according to Yahoo News, they own an estimated $11 billion in total rent debt. In some states, residents are already paying a little over a third of the salary on rent alone. In Massachusetts, Florida, New York, Americans spend over 30% of their income, respectively, on rent. And Moody's Analytics report that Florida in particular saw a substantial jump in rental cost, 4.2% over the last 3 years. And that's not helping the seniors that are in need of stimulus cash.
Underperformed among independents and moderates because their impression of many of the people in our party and leadership roles is that they're engulfed in chaos, negativity, and excess attacks. And it frightened independent and moderate Republican voters. Listen to that part again. It frightened independent and moderate Republican voters. That's exactly what I've been saying, Madam President. MAGA Republicans did, in fact, scare a lot of Americans who might otherwise give the GOP a closer look. All that talk about stolen elections, threatening poll workers, it frightened people. And thank God, Americans said this is not for us. Americans believe deeply in democracy, despite right-wing radical MAGA news media throwing all kinds of lies and incendiary statements at them every day. The roots of democracy are deep and a shield against that kind of activity. Now, Republicans have a choice to make when the 118th Congress begins next year. If they continue embracing the MAGA approach of chaos and gridlock and division, they're going to keep losing. I earnestly hope that Republicans realize it's better for them and, of course, for the country to cure themselves of this MAGA sickness as quickly as they can. I know that it won't happen overnight. And I know that some on the other side would prefer to double down on MAGA, but it is critical for our nation's health and, in fact, their party's health that they learn this lesson. Americans don't want government to be an endless circus of MAGA insanity. They want leaders who will take their jobs seriously and work across the aisle to solve our nation's problems. They know we're not going to succeed at everything, but they want good, earnest efforts at trying. And when we try, when both sides try in good faith, we often get a lot done, as this past Congress.
But let's start with this idea. We should be voting on this. We shouldn't be talking about it any longer. Let's vote.
Well, if I could just briefly respond before I give the mic to Senator Padilla about voting.
Can I say one thing I forgot? Unanimous consent to submit letters and op-ed to the record for Freedom Works, Council for Citizens Against Government Waste, American for Prosperity, American Tax Reform, and the Cato Institute, as well as an article from the Washington Post.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Great news, everybody. Lawmakers have finally started responding to the petition for $2,000 stimulus checks for everybody that is eligible for them. Democrats in the House of Representatives have decided to move forward with this new stimulus proposal. And the IRS has also just announced that many Americans are set to receive a surprise bonus check this tax season. So you want to be sure to stay until the end of this video to find out the most important stimulus check and Social Security information. You guys definitely don't want to miss out on this, everybody. But according to the IRS, taxpayers face major delays for their federal income tax refunds when they incorrectly claimed their recovery rate credit on a 2021 return, after they already received the full amount of the third economic impact payment that was issued last year. The IRS is seeking mistakes in claiming the recovery rebate credit and warns taxpayers that it could take several weeks to resolve some issues. However, everybody, it's important to note that the IRS is not sending out more stimulus money now automatically if you missed out last year. If you qualify, the only way to get the money is to claim the recovery rebate credit by filing a 2021 return. Now here is the list who might want to give the recovery rebate credit a second look just to be sure that you qualify for this check. Now, the IRS put a notice on its website in late January that confirmed that parents of a child born in 2021 did not receive a third stimulus payment for a newborn. Now, you may be eligible to receive up to $1,400 for the child born last year or welcome through adoption or foster care. The recovery rebate credit also can apply if an adult became a qualifying relative in 2021 and was not a qualifying relative in 2019 or 2020. Parents also should pay attention to the rules for claiming the child tax credit, which could further fatten a refund and be worth up to $3,600 per child. Now, remember, all households did not get the same payment, everybody, for stimulus money in 2021. A family of 4 might have qualified for up to $5,600, and a single person could qualify for up to $1,400. $1,400 not getting stimulus money for an extra dependent matters. College graduates and high school graduates who don't go on to college and live on their own might be able to also claim the recovery rebate credit if they qualify based on income and other requirements. But someone who was a dependent in 2020 but was no longer dependent in 2021, such as a 2020 graduate, might claim or qualify for the recovery rebate credit and not realize it. As tax day approaches, the IRS is reminding filers about the most common reasons for why